Good morning. Hello, everybody, and welcome to the Prince's Trust Diversity and Inclusion live talk. In the next hour, you will hear from our truly inspiring panelists to discuss diversity and disability in the workplace. My name is Mcbennett, and I work for the innovation team in the Prince's Trust. Over a year ago, I was running a studio business in East London, and it got turned into flats. I decided I want to change my career, so I started looking for jobs, a proper 9-to-5 job, whereas before that I was freelance and had run my own business. So I was applying for lots of jobs online, and I really struggled to get into work. Despite having a first in my degree, starting a business and lots of freelance experience, I really struggled to get into employment. I found myself as an unemployed young person receiving help from the Prince's Trust. I went to them and I started the Enterprise course, which is an amazing platform where you learn how to start your own business from start to beginning. And I then attended an event called Get Hired. So for those of you that don't know, Get Hired is a one-day event, which is now an online program. And at the time, this completely eradicated the barriers that I was facing at that time. I walked away from that event having had four successful interviews and 2 job offers. To this day, my manager has still not to have seen my CV. I've now been successfully employed with the Prince's Trust for over a year. It's my first ever office job, and I'm leading on the first Prince's Trust Diversity and Inclusion talks. So for those of you that are young people that are out there who are listening, I know exactly how you feel. Please do not give up. Reach out to the Prince's Trust and get support. It's completely free. The team are amazing. They're completely non-judgmental and friendly. So I wanted to start these live talks to make a change to young people's lives. I believe if we create economic justice for the next generation, then we can create a more inclusive and equal workforce. Yes, we need to educate ourselves. Yes, we need to have open conversations, but most of all, we need to take measurable actions to make some real change in our companies and the world of work. So I urge the audience today, whether you're a young person, a freelancer, or a business, to please take some pen and paper and write down some key nuggets of knowledge that you're going to hear from our amazing panelists today. Bring up these nuggets of knowledge in your next work meetings or with your friends and try and implement those changes within your world of work. Please support me on my journey because your opportunities really do change young lives. So throughout this talk, you have the opportunity to put any comments or any Q&As on the right-hand corner, so please feel free to do that. We will also be recording this talk and putting it live on YouTube with subtitles on it. So for those of you that need that, we will email that to you after the talk. The Prince's Trust is the largest youth charity in the UK. We support thousands of young people aged 11 to 30 to help them get into employment. The Prince's Trust vision is that every young person should have the chance to succeed, to start something with confidence, courses and career. To celebrate the Manchester Centre reopening for face-to-face delivery, we want to thank the Future Workforce Fund, as this is a groundbreaking 2-year initiative that tests innovative ways of delivering support for young people in Greater Manchester. So thank you to the Future Workforce Fund, which aims to transform young lives in Greater Manchester. So I'm going to set the scene a little bit. We're talking about disability in the workplace today. So what do we mean when we're talking about disability? There are many definitions of disability, and for today we will be referring to the Government Statistical Service Harmonised Core Definition. This identifies disabled as a person who has a physical or mental health condition or illness that has lasted or is expected to last 12 months or more, that reduces their ability to carry out day-to-day activities. Person with disabilities refers to anyone who is disadvantaged by the way in which the wider environment interacts with their impairment or long-term health problem. We are mindful that some people may not choose to use this language of disability and will never do so. So I'm going to set the scene for the barriers that some disabled people face getting into work. Pre-COVID-19, disabled people were paid on average 15.3% less than non-disabled people. During lockdown, the effects on disabled people's mental health have resulted in more feelings of loneliness. The cause of this is likely to be due to the fact that 52.7% of disabled people are more likely to report having self-isolated because of COVID-19. Negative attitudes towards disabled people are still far too common in our society. Disabled people have said that these negative attitudes represent one of the most significant barriers to them living the life they choose. So I've now set the scene. Those are the facts. Thank you for bearing with me on those facts. So we've got the unemployment pay gap, the effects of COVID-19, and the prejudices towards disabled people. So today we're going to talk about addressing those issues and how we can come up with solutions. So to the part that we've all been waiting for, I'm going to introduce our amazing panelists. Adam, would you like to introduce yourself first?
Good morning, everybody. My name is Adam Pearson. I am a TV presenter, actor, and disability advocate and campaigner, which means I go into institutions such as schools and talk about disability, disfigurement, inclusivity, body image, and body confidence. I also go into big corporates and talk about attitudes, accessibility, and language in terms of successfully hiring disabled people and making that shift from putting disabled people in jobs to placing disabled talent in careers.
Thank you. And Philippa, would you like to go next, please?
Yes, hi everyone. I'm Philippa. I currently work at Facebook in the recruiting team, and I recruit across EMEA, so various different teams within that. And I want to thank the Princess Trust for inviting me to be part of this conversation and creating that safe space to do it. It's nice to get dressed out of anything that isn't gym wear for once, but it's a really kind of passionate topic for me because essentially I'm a statistic. 1.3 billion people across the world live with some form of disability. I'm proudly dyslexic. I have family members with ADHD, bipolar, global learning difficulties. So I want to talk to and help candidates through the interviews who have perhaps had similar experiences to myself, but give them the confidence to know that they can achieve what they need to achieve. And essentially, hopefully today I'll be able to give you some of those tips to realise that we're not disabled, we're just differently abled, and we have just slightly different superpowers that you as a business can really utilise.
Thank you, Philippa. And Tanika, would you like to introduce yourself?
Hello everyone, my name is Tanika and I am a young Black female with a disability. This may be controversial a little bit, but this is my life, and I was born with sickle cell anemia, and then I went on to develop multiple sclerosis when I was 21. This is something that's quite daunting as soon as you get it because your whole body shuts down, and I was just thinking to myself, well, if my body's going to shut down now, what's going to happen when I get to become an elderly person? So I think for me, it's just about perseverance. Having a strong mind makes everything strong. Strong mind, strong everything. Having faith in yourself and friends and family to support you is what definitely got me through. And the Princess Trust was supporting me through their different courses just to ensure that, and reminds me that actually, Tanika, you're able to do anything you put your mind to, and just believe in yourself.
Thank you everybody for your introductions. So Adam, you are a successful actor who's worked with Scarlett Johansson. You've created your own TV programmes for the BBC and for Channel 4, as well as a couple of weeks ago being the winner of Celebrity Mastermind. Can you tell us a bit about your journey and how you got to where you are now?
So I had no plans to go into the the media. Academically, my background is in business and economics. I graduated from the University of Brighton in, what year did I graduate? 2007. And then did a gap year afterwards to avoid top-up fees. I had to pay way more if I'd done it before. And then just sort of left uni and didn't know what I wanted to do. Graduating was all a big anticlimax. I mean, I thought I'd walk out of my last exam, they'd be playing Eye of the Tiger over the PA, and an eagle would swoop down and hand me a job, and none of that happened. So there's that massive and now what moment. We've got to do a bit of self-assessment, and we often forget to do that within the rigors of academia. And so I kind of applied for a few jobs here and there, applied for a job in radio, didn't get it, and they put me in commissioning in the TV department, and it just seemed like a really good fit. So I got there, I worked hard, I came into work, had a random chat with a random guy in a lift who turned out to be the head of TV, who quite liked the cut of my jib. And so he sent me to another company on like what was meant to be 2 weeks work experience. And then 7 years later, I've got multiple documentaries and TV series and films under my belt. And it's all a case of seizing every opportunity and doing your best, and also being nice to people. TV is an industry where you don't know who you're going to meet on the way up or on the way down, and so it always pays to be courteous and to get there early, stay there late, do your job, show initiative. The classic things that everyone is told to do anyway. And now I'm in a situation where I can kind of pay that good fortune I've had forward. And if I know of people who are disabled, who are in a situation that I was in at that age, I can fire off a few emails and say, hey, here's my friend XYZ. They're looking to do XYZ. Is there somewhere we can all help them out here?
Thank you. And why is it so important that disability is part of the diversity and inclusion conversation, Adam?
I think it's important because for so long it hasn't been. Statistically, and this is from Caroline Casey's organisation, the Valuable 500, 98% of companies say they do diversity, but only 4% do disability. And I'm afraid to say that if you aren't doing disability, you're not doing diversity. What you are in fact doing is some weird offshoot of diversity called diverse-ish. And I have zero time for diverse-ish.
And why are you so passionate about this subject, Adam? Where does your passion come from?
Well, because I think I've been there. I think I've been at the wrong end of the proverbial stick. And the three main barriers to disability and employment from either side of the hiring, firing dichotomy are attitudes, accessibility, and language. And I think we need to create a conversation and a landscape where both disabled people and employers can focus on ability rather than disability, and stop seeing it as a burden and seeing it as an opportunity. We've got 15 million disabled people in the UK. So if disabled people in the UK were a country, they'd be the 74th largest country on the planet. We've got a global spending power of $8 trillion. And in the UK alone, that's a market of 250 billion, and that's growing 14% every year. So that's the potential workforce and potential marketplace that you can operate in. And 80% of disabled people acquire their disabilities while they're of working age. And these are things that we all too often forget when we're looking at the recruitment process for disabled talent, disabled candidates. And so I think we need to have a good long look and reshuffle on how we discuss it, how we handle it, and how we implement it in our wider economy and within our corporate businesses and practices.
I love that. See it as an opportunity. I love that, what you were saying there, Adam. So Philippa, as someone who has a successful career across Europe, the Middle East and Africa for Facebook, can you tell us a bit about your career path and how your dyslexia has been part of this?
Yeah, sure. So I think I've actually come to learn more about dyslexia in my working career than I ever did in my school career, which has been quite eye-opening. So dyslexia actually affects at least 1 in 10 people, and yet only 3% of the public believe that dyslexia is a positive trait. And I definitely was grouped within that. When I think back to my schooling, I knew I had difficulties learning. I excelled in some kind of creative subjects, but it was harder in spellings and maths and things like that. And my teachers just, I'm not going to say my age, but my teachers just couldn't pinpoint it back then. Dyslexia wasn't really a thing. It wasn't really known. So whilst they raised concerns, it was very much a thing that I had to kind of deal with myself. And I think that has made me really resilient. I think that's probably made a lot of people resilient. And that's one of the kind of key things that I take away with anyone with a disability, is that we know how to hack. We know how to kind of find our own solutions to get around certain challenges. So when I then think about how that affected me going into the workplace, I didn't go to university. Schooling was difficult for me. It was exhausting. So the thought of going and paying a large sum of money to go to university as well was just not something I wanted to consider. So going into the working life, I remember a very vivid experience of speaking to a recruitment agency, and without even having a conversation with them, sat in reception and asked to do a spelling test, which as a dyslexic person is probably the most petrifying thing you could do. So I never wanted someone to have that experience, and someone actually asked me whether I'd consider going into recruiting myself, and I thought, if I can give someone a positive experience of going into the workplace, feeling supported, having some kind of advice, then that's what I want to do. And actually, when we think about dyslexia, often the real success stories and the superpowers, as I like to say, are that you're good influencers, you are great with working with people, you're very good at problem solving, you're very creative, you're good communicators. And recruitment made sense because previously I'd always focus on the things I wasn't great at. So spelling, reading, memorizing facts. So someone else highlighting the things that I was really great at led me into recruitment. And then working with clients before I got to Facebook, I guess my biggest challenge and I guess frustration is that businesses want to hire quickly, and with speed doesn't always come diversity and good intent. You know, when you're trying to find someone that isn't within the kind of normal categories, then it takes longer, and that is just not something that some businesses I worked with really understood. So I made the shift to go in-house. They are very much about giving people the power to build community. They have a lot of resource groups that really empower people to connect and kind of bounce ideas off each other. So they are a strengths-based business as well, and very much you're told from day one to bring your authentic self. So I felt very much that me as an individual was going to be supported and my differences embraced. So I've also since joining the team, so that I do that on the recruitment side, which I'll talk about later, but I also have founded a resource group called Differently Abled. So going back to that, we're not disabled, we're just differently abled. So I am the neurodiversity lead, so anything to kind of do with dyslexia and that kind of thing. And what we look to do is support people who are differently abled, whether that's physically, mentally, or cognitively, and just share lots of things that we as employees use, whether it's tools like Text Expander, which is great if you need to write the same kind of emails, that really helps you out, or just advice that we have in the workplace to support each other.
Brilliant. I am a fellow dyslexic, so I know about all of the hurdles that I faced in the past, especially when it comes to trying to get a job, because CVs and written tasks can be a bit of a barrier. So I think it's about how do we influence companies to think innovatively and use digital platforms going forwards. Tanika, thank you so much for joining us today. So as a young person who's been diagnosed with multiple sclerosis, can you tell us a little bit about your journey in finding work and about the barriers that you've faced?
Well, for me, I think my main barrier was first of all with myself, because I was just thinking, how are people going to perceive me now that I have this condition? But then once I got over that, I was like, yeah, I need to just put forth my best self. And so I applied for work, and I thought, okay, I've got a degree in social work, but I knew I didn't want to follow that lead at that time. Coming straight out of the hospital, I just wanted to do something that would have been simple for me to just get my feet wet. So I applied for retail. However, I kept getting knocked back, and I was thinking, well, why is that? I didn't understand, because I never received any feedback from these companies to say why they didn't want to employ me. So I just then assumed that it was because of my conditions, because I was open and honest and I disclosed my hidden conditions. And then this made me feel really upset, and I felt disheartened. And I was thinking, do I even continue to go forth in looking for more work, or should I just leave it? And that's how I then was able to get involved with the Prince's Trust. And I'm so happy that I did, because they accepted me and they saw the ability behind the things that I couldn't see I was good at. And I was so grateful for someone to just see me and not say, well, actually, you know, you're not able to have the right ability to comprehend certain information, and you're not going to be able to process information as easily as somebody else. And when you go into the working world, you don't have somebody sitting next to you to baby you through every step. So this is something that I had to realize for myself and try and gain that ability. And with the Prince's Trust, they did this get into hospital services, and I thought, well, I'm in and out the hospital all the time, so why not try and figure out how to give back to the hospital services that were looking after me. And so this was something that was really good, and I felt like I was moving forward and being able to help other people despite the fact that I had this disability.
Such an inspiring story, Tanika. Thank you so much for joining us. I love your confidence and your perseverance, and thank you for being an amazing young ambassador for the Prince's Trust. So now we've set the scene with our stories, we want to start talking about what are the solutions that companies and recruiters who are listening can do to make a more inclusive workforce for disabled people. So Adam, how do you think that people with a disability can add value to business?
So we've been talking about, it all comes down to strengths and weaknesses. And as both my esteemed colleagues said, disabled people are very resourceful. They're good at hacking. They understand that with a disability comes certain challenges that might not be there for a non-disabled person. And so we have to learn to work around those. So our thinking is already problem solution orientated. And so that kind of thing in a corporate environment can be really, really useful. I think a disabled employee on average adds £60,000 of value to a company's bottom line. So those are the numbers that we're talking about here. And it all comes down to being given the equality of opportunity as our non-disabled counterparts. I have no interest in equality of outcome or quota hires or pity hires or what have you, because that sets everyone up for a fall and helps neither a corporate or a disabled person advance a career or a brand, and no one really learns anything. And I think the big issue that we have in execution of this is that there are no disabled people in positions of power and influence within these companies. And so you've got no one who knows about disability or access or language or attitudes making decisions about it. And ultimately, it normally ends up with a bunch of able-bodied people discussing what they think they need to do to better equip their companies to hire disabled people, rather than actually going to the audience they're trying to serve and having a really open, honest conversation, saying, hey, what do we need to do to solve this imbalance, to solve this pay gap and this employment gap? Last time I checked the disability employment gap, that's the number of disabled people ready, willing and able to work versus the number who actually are. And that's what really needs to be done. We need to have really open, honest and difficult conversations. And what sets disability apart from the other protected characteristics in terms of recruitment is it's the only one that costs money. We can all send an email saying, can we be less sexist on one day? Could we dial back the racism on one day? If we could be less homophobic on one day, that would be great. But you can't look at your stairs on a Friday night and say, if we could be a bit flatter, a bit rampier in the morning, because we've got a guy in a wheelchair starting, that would be amazing. It's an area where you've really got to kind of put your money where your mouth is and make physical changes and reasonable adjustments to not only your working practices, but also the physical environment. And I think once we get over those issues, and there's government support out there, so the companies don't have to take a hit at all. They just need to apply for funding to do it, which is something that not a lot of people know about. And so kind of knowledge and understanding are the real superpowers in this. So yeah, have honest conversations and direct conversations. And I think the language barrier is a real fear there. No one wants to have the conversation for fear of saying what they believe is the wrong thing. And I'd rather be slightly offended, but still have a real good conversation about it than just everyone sit in awkward silence and nothing change.
Love that. Love that. Don't be scared, guys. Keep having those conversations and don't let language be a barrier. And also, please have a look at the government funding that Adam was talking about. Philippa, so you work in recruitment. So why is it important for companies to recruit and champion within this space?
Yeah, I think simply put, the data is there that companies that focus on inclusion outperform their peers. Like, if you don't believe me, there are many studies behind it, but it's a fact. And simply also put, the world is not a one size fits all. Every single human being has different needs. And if your business is going to succeed, you're going to need people with different opinions, different experiences, having a seat at that table to help those businesses. Hiring inclusively, you're never going to get that full understanding. And I think if you're really serious about being inclusive, it also needs to be business as usual. Adam mentions it there. It can't be a little nice to have badge on your website. It needs to be ingrained inherently in your recruiting staff, your culture, your stakeholders' minds. It needs to be embedded everywhere. It needs to be a topic that, yes, might not always be comfortable, but a conversation that is always had. And it's about making a purposeful effort to be a progressive organisation that has the confidence and the knowledge, even if it's knowledge that you gain over time, to realise that there are so many possibilities. By creating that mindset and creating that kind of process and internal process to be successful in recruitment, and really kind of gain from that rich pool of diverse talent, because there is some incredible talent out there as well. So we always kind of say it's great to have the intention to do it, but if you don't have the process to do it, you're going to fail. And if you have the process to do it but not the intention to do it, you're going to fail as well. So I think when we think about that at Facebook, and even just throughout my recruiting career, Adam mentioned it there. There is a statistic that 80% of people will gain a disability between the ages of 18 to 64, and that is your working population. So don't just think about it as people that you're going to hire. It's actually going to affect your current working staff as well. So unless you are fully inclusive, you're putting things in place, it is going to affect you as a business, whether you like it or not. So we really need to think about how we support employees, and how you are going to really set people up for success and make use of their superpowers and their kind of different abilities as well. So I don't believe that anyone purposely puts barriers or intends to create barriers, but have you really looked at your organisation? Have you looked at the application process? Have you looked at the interviews? Have you looked at your onboarding to kind of make that possible?
Thank you, Adam. I don't know, or Adam and Philip, I don't know what successful initiatives have you seen within the recruitment space or in the work culture within corporate companies or in small businesses? Which ones have you guys seen that you think would be useful to share with the audience?
Well, I got into the BBC on their disability recruitment scheme, where they hire exclusively for disabled candidates on 6-month fixed-term contracts. And then as part of that 6-month contract, they send you off to, like, with the other successful applicants on the same scheme for training and for networking events and what have you, to give you a wider perspective of how big corporations such as the BBC work. And it teaches you how to communicate with people on an executive level and how best to sell yourself. I think particularly when you're fresh out of education, you're not quite sure how to sell yourself, and you often get it wrong, where you either undersell yourself or you really oversell yourself, and the expectation and the delivery just don't match up. And it's all about teaching those soft communication skills and soft skills that serve you really, really well in a working environment. So I thoroughly love that. And quickly, if I could pick up on something that was just said. Again, disability is the only protected characteristic that isn't mutually exclusive. And by that I mean, I'm not going to go to bed this evening as like a white CB church-going male and wake up tomorrow morning as a black lesbian with a partial on for Scientology. But anyone at any point could be, God forbid, in an accident, like skiing or driving or just slipping in the bathroom, and have to suddenly change their life. They could end up in a wheelchair, even temporarily. And so if you're listening to this, and again, God forbid that should happen to you, how does your journey to work look now? How does getting to your desk look now? How will the other employees at where you work treat you now? And if you can't answer those questions, ask yourself, A, why not? And then how can you put yourself in a position to be able to answer those questions?
Amazing. Thank you, Adam. I love that about looking at things from a different perspective. Tanika, could you tell us a little bit about how you think that disabled young people can feel more empowered within the workplace?
Could I also just go off the back of what Adam said, because
it's so go for it.
I can fully relate with that, because when I got my diagnosis finally, so I was in the hospital for about, I think it was about 5 months, and I was so scared because they kept saying, oh, we're not sure what it is, it's probable MS, but they weren't 100% sure. So I had to go through all these different scans and tests for them to make a conclusive diagnosis. And once I got my diagnosis, I was happy, yes, but I also thought, well, what now? What's next for me? Because in the beginning, I couldn't move my eyes, I couldn't open my mouth to speak, I couldn't go to the toilet, I couldn't walk properly. And these were all simple things that I once could do that now was alien to me. And I think that was one of the lowest points in my life, because I just thought, why is this happening to me? What have I done wrong? Like, did I do something that I shouldn't have done? Did I have too much fun at university? And maybe I shouldn't have drank so much. But I just thought, okay, what now? And I think it's so important to remind yourself that this is not the end. This is not the end. There's medication that can help you, and there's support out there that you can have to guide you through this it's a new body that you now have to train and you have to control it rather than it control you. So I just had to think, like, if I'm going to potentially be in a wheelchair one day, I'm going to make it the best wheelchair that you've ever seen. I'm going to make it the best walking stick that you've ever seen, because those were the things that was my biggest fear. People actually noticing the difference in my abilities. And so I thought I need to embrace it, and whatever it is, make it the best. So I just think anyone who's listening to me right now, or anyone else on this panel, is to definitely have strength and be strong in yourself, and always knowing to yourself that you can do anything that you put your mind to. And I'm a strong advocate for that.
Amazing. We're getting some chat actually in the group saying, love Tanika's story and how strong and driven you are. That's from somebody in the group. So Tanika, I love what you were saying also about controlling, not letting it control you, and you're in control of it. I think that was a great point. So how do you think that young disabled people can feel empowered within the workplace? What do you feel that employers can do to ensure that empowerment?
I think it's about just having that open conversation with them, asking that employee, what can I do to help you to make you feel more comfortable within the workplace? I think making sure that there are lifts available for people who may not be able to use the stairs, but also have the stairs to not completely ignore the fact that there are people that can use them, but just making sure that there's a balance. I think also and just simple things like the toilets, making sure there's a disabled toilet. I think that's great. And also having maybe a room whereby somebody who maybe has a disability, they can go to that room just for a bit of self-reflection or to have something to eat. It'd be great if there's like a vending machine with water and nuts that are going to help that person. So I know for me personally, I've never ate so many nuts in my life since I've got MS. Brazil nuts, cashew nuts, what other nuts do I have? And also making sure that that person who has a disability is acknowledged within that environment, making sure there's training to help that young person. And also the staff and employees need to be trained to know what disabilities are about, both visible and hidden. So they're not completely blindsided and staring at somebody in an awkward way because they're not sure what to say. How do you speak to somebody that has a disability? You don't want to make them feel like you're patronizing them, because we're human just like everyone else. And I think it's even harder for those who have a hidden disability like myself, because people expect more of you because you look normal, whatever normal is these days. But I think for me, I remember when I came out that someone said to me, what's wrong with you? Are you drunk? Why are you walking like that? No, I'm not drunk. I'm off balance. And that's because I have multiple sclerosis. And sometimes it's annoying having to explain your whole life story to somebody. So to have that training in the workplace, I think would be a great awareness for everybody.
Amazing. Thank you, Tanika. I know that I've spoken to Adam quite a lot previously about how the perception of disabled people needs to change. And Tanika, you touched on it in the sense that it's not about viewing disabled people with a poor them, pity eye. Adam, how do you feel that we can kind of change that view?
I think that's down to visibility of disability, not just in the workplace, but everywhere. And we need to put it away from these like cliches and tropes that we use of either kind of pity or heroism, or particularly for disfigurement, you're either a victim or a villain, and there's nothing else in between. Certainly in films, like I've been like the best yet worst Bond bad guy ever. Best in the sense of I've got the look, worst in the sense of I'm grossly incompetent. And we need to kind of take it away from there and almost normalize it and teach people how to view not just disability but disabled people as people with a real 360-degree perspective and get over whatever inertia there is, whether it's fear, awkwardness. More often than not, it's unfamiliarity. 9 out of 10 people in the UK have never had a disabled person in their house. So that's the level of unfamiliarity that we're talking about here. And that's going to come down, again, everything always ties back to communication and sitting down and just thrashing this out and having like a real honest, open chat. You will never know what a disabled employee needs until you ask them. So going away and Googling it or playing kind of House MD in your head is only going to stress you out, and it's not going to serve anyone. So again, just be really honest and have the conversation. And if you have questions, like ask them. And as long as it's delivered with sensitivity and sincerity, you can't go wrong.
Thank you. Thank you very much. I was just going to go ask Philippa about dyslexia, actually, because I know that I've received within the workplace perceptions of people about, you know, dyslexia and how you may be less able. What's your experience with that, and how do you think that companies can create a work culture which empowers neurodiverse people?
Yeah, I think it's an interesting one. We always say, as Adam quite rightly said, if what you don't know what you don't know, and until you ask people, you're not going to learn. And I think one thing to really stress is that, especially with things like dyslexia affects people in different ways. Like when we talk about the resource group that we have, one of my colleagues is dyslexic, and how she functions and how she sees challenges and kind of the solutions that she has is completely different to mine. I really need like a lot of bullet points. I need things color coded. I process information better verbally than I do in kind of written format, which is extremely hard now that we're all working from home, because you don't get to see your colleagues as much. So unless I'm having a lot of VC meetings, it's difficult. And I think the other thing to say is that unless people are self-IDing, it's really hard to get that information as well, to give people that confidence, that open space to say that this is what I need. And so I think it takes a culture, and it takes kind of strong management. It takes open management and being bold and open to some of our Facebook values to get people to say like, this is what I need, and then their colleagues and their allies embracing that. Because I think I saw a statistic the other day that 76% of students wouldn't inform a potential employer of their disability. I didn't put my hand up to say that I was dyslexic when I interviewed at Facebook, and not because I didn't think it was going to be embraced, but because I don't see it as men find ways of working, and despite being in recruitment where you're reading a lot and you're probably writing a lot of emails, I'm then proudly open to say that I'm dyslexic, because I have our VP of London is proudly dyslexic and has given me the confidence to talk about it. So when I think about the kind of three things that we always talk about within the kind of workspace is, you need to be accommodating, especially if you're in hiring. Look at your job descriptions. Do you really need excellent written communication skills in a job that isn't a communication role? Probably not. Are you writing the word expert? Because expert for people with autism is far too vague. Like, what does expert mean? So think about your languages, think about your accommodations when people are coming in for interviews, to make them feel that they're welcome even when they are interviewing. Is it giving them a bit of paper and a pen so they can write things down? Is it giving them a really quiet room, because people with ADHD struggle sitting in a cafe if you were to interview them because there's too much noise? And of course, make sure that you're not giving that information to an interviewer, because there's data protection. You shouldn't be giving that information to the interviewer about the individual, but actually set the room up, set the space up to give them quiet spaces, give your employees quiet spaces if they struggle with too much noise. We actually have a whole load of open source training that I really encourage you, if you're a business, if you're an ally, if you're an employee, to go and look at. So you can find them on the Facebook page. So one is managing a respectful workplace, which I think comes back to your question around how do people embrace everyone's different abilities. Managing bias, so everyone as an employee has to go through that. So training our employees to identify and counteract unconscious bias. Be the ally, so picking up on common languages and tools to address that. And then for managers, managing inclusion. So from day one, you're taught that this conversation should be normalized, but people should be embraced. And actually, there's not an option. Like you have to build that community internally. And then there's lots of different things as well within that.
Thank you, Philippa. That's some great, absolutely great knowledge, nuggets of knowledge there for our listeners to take away. So I just want to wrap up our panel discussion before we go on to the Q&A from the audience. So Adam, we're going to look at, well, all of you actually, what is your one key measurable action that you think that the audience should take away from today? Adam, would you like to go first?
Oh, that's a tricky one, because when it comes to measurable action, there's a lot of, how do we measure it and what have you. I'm gonna say get good training in there. We've heard about things like unconscious bias, which everyone does, by the way. I think unconscious bias is far too often used as a term to beat people over the head with. When in actual fact, it refers to the snap judgments we make about people armed with little information, which even I do. Even I watch Love Island and just shake my head in disapproval. But I think it's a case of teaching people to acknowledge it. And so I'm going to say training. Find a good kind of training program. I can certainly put you in touch with my guys and have as many people do it as possible. And if you equip your workplace and equip your workforce, then any disabled appointment you do make will be a success.
Thank you, Adam. What about you, Philippa? What's your key action for the audience to take away?
I think targets. They hold people accountable. It of course depends where you are as a business. So you might think, is it a number of events per year? We always say that you need to have 2 touch points to engage with a community. Is it training completion percentage? Like, pick the right one for you. But I think targets and the 5 main things I think you should focus on. I know it's not one, but it's one as a collective. Know where you're at right now and where you're going. That's number 1. Have company-wide targets that are measurable, keep everyone accountable. Have an audit of your recruitment process and keep auditing, keep your recruitment and HR accountable as well. Have a senior sponsor that champions it, both internally and publicly, and train all that's part of their performance review as well, to again hold them accountable. Because I think without that data and without that number, it's just going to be an opinion. So I think have specific targets that you aim for, and educate.
Thank you. So we've got, so far we've got training, targets, and then Tanika, what is your action for the audience to take away?
Oh, they've took all the good ones. But I would definitely say training is important, but I think a task for the audience would be, after this, would be to go and research hidden conditions, because we can't see them. I think it's important to know what they are and how they affect people, and what are the different symptoms of those conditions, and how best to work with somebody with a hidden condition. And then you'll be able to have an open conversation in the workplace with somebody about it. And then going forward, hopefully this will create a culture within the workplace of people having the awareness of hidden conditions and how to work alongside somebody that has.
Brilliant. So thank you, panelists, for your discussion. So the key takeaways are training, targets, research. That's the key takeaways from today. So we're going to go on to some Q&As from the audience. We've got one that's come in here. They're all anonymous at the moment. Nobody's putting their name. But Adam, could you somebody's is negative language on what is big question, but I can take that one.
Could you repeat the question, please?
What is negative language and what is positive language around disability?
Okay, language is a real sticking point for a lot of people. And some people prefer kind of person-first language, person with a disability. Other people go with, like myself, go with disabled person. And then some people will use differently abled. And I don't think, this may sound like I'm dodging the question, but stay with me. I don't think there is a one-size-fits-all to correct language around disability in the workplace. And I think ultimately common sense should prevail. And obviously we know that there are certain things that you absolutely can't say. Like you wouldn't refer to me as the office spastic any more than you tell a female colleague to get back in the kitchen. But again, I think as long as you're sensitive and are kind of thinking it through, then ultimately it'll all be okay. So my answer is common sense ultimately prevails. And there are also a section of people that will find offence in everything. And I think the more eggshells that we put down for people to trip over, the less likely they're going to be to go there anyway. So my overarching advice would be just be sensible, be sensitive, and let common sense do its thing.
Brilliant answer. Thank you, Adam. We've got another question come in here for Tanika. How do you think we can ensure to champion and support our teams in a blended environment, so where some are in the office and when some are working at home?
Good question. I think the best way to do that is to ensure that everything is accessible. So like, because of this COVID-19 and we're having to do things online, if say for example a training session is happening in the office, make sure that is being recorded so that somebody who's working from home can see it also. And I think that's a good way to include everybody so that they are able. And also if somebody has a hearing impairment, then you've got someone maybe doing sign language also on board, and that will definitely ensure that everyone is included and thought about. We want to know that we're not left out.
Thank you. Someone's got a question for you here, Philippa. Had your VP not openly come out about dyslexia, would you have opened up about your dyslexia?
Oh, good question. I think I would have done, actually. From memory, the conversation came up because our VP of Instagram was visiting the UK and opened a forum for anyone. It was an open invite for the company, so not necessarily if you identified as being differently abled, and people were talking about his experiences, and actually the forum itself enabled me to kind of talk about it. So him definitely in part, but I think there was always the space, as I said before, from orientation. You're taught to be your authentic self. You're taught that everyone has superpowers. And I have really supportive management as well. So it's been something that I've been in recruitment for kind of 7-8 years now. So it's taken that amount of time to be in the right environment to talk about it, even though it's been something I've been passionate about. But management has also helped that as well. So I think it's two-pronged. My manager has come up with a fantastic document where we as a team have a come to me when and a don't come to me when. So it talks about people's strengths. So like, come to me when, for me, you want anything creative done, like a presentation, because that's my skills, but please don't come to me when you want me to spell check something, because that will stress me out and I won't be very good at it. So I think managers really understanding the differences your team members need, whether someone needs something written, whether someone needs a video call to explain something, like really get to know your team and how you can enable them, but have that senior stakeholder that's also kind of giving the wider company a bit of a kind of a lighthouse example of being brave and talking about it.
Thank you, Philippa. Adam, I've got 2 questions here. How can people find out about your training, firstly?
So with that, just get hold of me on the old Twitter sphere, Adam_Pearson, and we can start a dialogue from there.
Brilliant. And then I've got another question. Do you think that the Equality Act is fit for purpose, and are there enough legal protections to promote disability equality in the workplace?
I think when it comes to disability, the Equality Act is a piece of toothless, useless legislation. So sorry if that's a bit on the fence for anyone. And I also think things like disability confident are incredibly unhelpful. I'm not interested in competence, I'm interested in competence. And I think there are a lot of companies who have the label disability confident when they're incompetent around the area. And I think we need to hold companies to real rigorous account on their disability numbers. As I said, only 4% of companies do disability when it comes to diversity, which means 96 don't. And it's like saying if you found out tomorrow that 96% of your friends didn't like you. Like, that's how a disabled person feels when they go into any employment situation or trying into any marketplace. And I think, again, like real accountability needs to be had. There was a case in America. A blind customer asked Domino's Pizza to make their website accessible for him, and rather than doing it, which would have cost maybe $20,000 to future-proof your website and make it accessible for people with both hearing and vision impairments, rather than do that, they took it to the courts in America and lost. And rather than paying that initial $20,000, it cost them in excess of $2 million. And I think that's the kind of level of accountability we need to create. And if we're going to give companies the autonomy to hire and fire as they see fit, autonomy and accountability are inseparable. And so they also need to be held to the same level of accountability and be a lot more transparent in the process. And Tamika said earlier that just the real lack of feedback as to why she wasn't successful in applications. That feedback needs to be there all the time. And if it's A, too much effort, or B, it means you actually have to say no disabled people, that's a problem.
Thank you. Feedback, definitely agree on giving young people feedback in the recruitment process is really, really valuable to their progression, and also, yeah, informs them on how they can do better. So thank you so much to our amazing panelists. Thank you for the discussions today. Very interesting points that you've all made. And thank you to all of our audience for the amazing questions at the end. As I said at the beginning, we need to educate ourselves and have open conversations, but we do also need to implement those changes within our companies. So thank you for your time. If you're currently looking to hire, or you have any live vacancies, then please do get in touch with the Get Hired team in the Prince's Trust. And if you're a freelancer, a young person, or a business, and you do want to work with us, then please do reach out to us too. We will send this recording out to everybody on YouTube, and we'll put subtitles. Enjoy your day, and look forward to hopefully having you on another live talk. Our next live talk is on the 1st of October, and it's Black History Month special, celebrating talent. Thank you very much.